for staying, for learning, and I think that just the fact that you are here at this time, willing to listen to someone like me, speaks to your dedication as a professional. And I want to talk to you more than just your professional life. I want to talk about how that line between the professional and the personal blurs for most teachers, and the power that can happen when you actually enter into authentic relationships with kids. And so while this is a tech conference, and while I'll be talking about technology, I think when we were thinking about things like the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I think before we talk about technology, before we talk about curriculum, before we talk about any of that stuff, we should be talking about relationships. Because with those relationships, we can expect more from kids. They'll do more for us, and they will achieve more things. And so that's a little bit of what I want to share with you. So this is me, both on the Twitters and on Gmail. So I would absolutely love it if you could live tweet the event, if you have questions for me or comments or thoughts. And I would be happy to get back to you. I'd love to connect with you. I do use this tool to connect with others. I hopefully teach others to use this tool as well, as I do a lot of higher ed teaching. So I want to talk a little bit about my story. My story starts somewhere in my mid-20s. And my parents, neither one of my parents graduated from high school. My sister didn't make it past the 8th grade. And I can remember that when I was 18, my parents strongly encouraged me to join the military. So I did. I joined the United States Air Force. And I actually put, that's not only the only picture I had, but that's the last time my stomach looked like that. So I'm gonna rock that thing for all it's worth. I believe that was 1986 or 87. So I joined the Air Force after high school. I spent 4 glorious years as a teacher in the United States Air Force. And then I went to work for the Hyatt Hotel Corporation. And then I worked at the Hyatt Regency in Scottsdale, and then I transferred out to the Hyatt Regency in La Jolla. So somewhere in my late 20s, I remember having a conversation with my mother, being very upset that my nephew was dropping out of school. And I said, Mom, I don't understand. Why are you allowing, because she was pretty much his mother. I said, why are you allowing Jeremy to drop out of school? And her answer to me was, well, son, we just ain't school people. And she believed that. I don't believe that, but she believed that. And I think all too many of some of the kids that we have actually believe that there are school people and there are not school people. And so I took that as motivation, and I started San Diego City College at the age of 28. And I was working, I'd left the hotel, and I was working as a bartender. And so I finished City College, and I went to UCSD. And so I thought, well, I'm already a bartender, I might as well be a professional bartender, so I majored in philosophy. And all of my friends were saying, you're so stupid. You're 28 years old. Why are you majoring in philosophy? I said, because I love it. I find it interesting. Well, what are you going to do? I said, I don't know. But I'm going to have a degree. That's what I do know. And so it was around this time that I met my future wife. And so she also started at UCSD, and I finished the year before she did. And there was a time there when we had 2 cars, and we got into a car accident, and they totaled her car, and we didn't have any money, and so we said, well, we're either going to have to move close to your work or close to my work, because we can't afford another car. And so we moved close to her work, which was in downtown San Diego. And this is 600 Front Street, and I believe this was in the year 1995. And downtown San Diego wasn't what it was then. And so in 1995, we moved downtown. There were actually empty parking lots. I used to play football out there with my friend Will. Now they're all high-rise apartments. But whenever we would leave the parking garage, I would see this building. And it didn't say Tucson Teen Club, that's just a picture. It was just a building. And I would see these kids mulling about the front of the building. And I didn't know what they were doing. And then I saw this very large man in what looked to be a police uniform. And he was always outside with them. And so that occurred over a period of a few months, and one day I walked up to him and I said, "Sir, why are you locking these kids in this building?" And he laughed at me and he said, "I'm not locking these kids in the building. This is a homeless shelter and I'm the security guard." And I said, "Oh, what do I have to do to work here?" And then I found what I was going to do. I found out who the principal was. I went to the principal and I said, "I want to work there. Not just because it's across the street from my house, but I want to work there because I don't believe my mother. I believe that we all have the ability to be successful, and I wanted to prove it." And so I said, "That's what I want to do." And it took, then I began my credential program, because that's what you do, right? You find your teaching job and then you go get your credentials. So, well, I didn't actually have the job, right? I just said I wanted the job, and I kept showing up like it was my job. And so I eventually got my credential. Well, before I got my credential, there were 2 teachers there on site. It had 30 beds, and one of the teachers left. And so the principal contacted, and I was doing subbing for the same principal, thinking that, he's not going to get away from me. And so once that gentleman left, the principal contacted me and he said, "You're in luck. I'm sending you to the Tucson Teen Center." And I was ecstatic. And so I went there, and then I stayed there for a few years. I taught there for 2 years before they even hired me full-time. I was a long-term sub for 2 years, and I didn't care. I was still waiting tables at night. And I worked there for 2 years, and we eventually got this beautiful new building in San Diego on 5th and Ash Street. So it became, instead of the Tucson Teen Center, it became the Tucson Academy. And it was there that I worked with my good friend Melanie Tolan. And she and I, for 9 years, did the entire high school curriculum at this shelter. And so it was there that we developed amazing relationships with kids. I had some of those kids you see I'm still friends with. This was the kid smack in the middle is Ahmad Hereford, and he was the first student that I had at the Teen Center. And I think he's in his mid-30s, unfortunately, now. But not for him, for me. But we developed relationships with these kids. And Melanie and I didn't necessarily always know what we were doing. I was telling Crystal that sometimes I feel like Alex Trebek, because we taught the whole curriculum. I had the answers because I have the answer key book, but I didn't always know what I was doing. But I did know that I loved those kids, and I did know that I was going to do whatever I could to make sure that they could be successful. And so for 8 years, that's what she and I did together. We made sure that those kids were successful. Failure was not an option. They continued to work until they couldn't work anymore. We worked very closely with the Teen Center, and we made a lot of progress with these kids. And when I first got there in that building, I believed in social justice, but when I left that building, it became part of my soul. And so I think that these words speak directly to anyone that has worked with kids they're not homeless kids, they're kids that suffer from homelessness. It's not part of their DNA. And Martin Luther King said, "True compassion is more than flinging a coin to a beggar. It comes to see that an edifice which produces beggars needs restructuring." And I believe that wholeheartedly. And so I think that I worked very hard to ensure that I could maintain high expectations for my kids, but they understood the reality of the world. And they understood that some of them might walk to the plate with 2 strikes against them, but they still had to get it hit. And so I maintained those high expectations for them, and Melanie and I graduated well over 100 kids that we continue to have relationships today. And when I first started there, we had this beauty. And we had one of them. And so we didn't do a lot with computers, and quite honestly, it was like 1996, and I didn't know what to do with computers. But I knew that they were cool, and I knew that there was somehow these things were going to change the way that we do school. And so around the year 1998, I believe, and I could be wrong on the year, my principal came to me and said, "I'm going to give you all of your Title I money. You make the decision on how you spend it." And I said, "Okay." And I went to Melanie and I said, "Apple just released these crazy looking things. Let's buy some." And she said, "Okay." So we bought 5. Does anybody remember these things? Yeah, I bought 5 of them. And an airport. And we connected them wirelessly. It was pretty amazing back in 1996 because not a lot of people were doing that. We didn't know what the hell we were going to do with them, but we turned them on and we connected them wirelessly. And then we got one of these. We still didn't know what we were going to do with these things, but it was not going to stop us from trying, which led to things like this.
Hey, class, you're probably wondering why Reginald isn't here today.
Well, Reginald's mom called us today. She said, wow, Reginald's sick today. He has the flu.
Rex, we were supposed to play basketball today. Hey, did anyone call a doctor?
When Reginald was home with the flu.
We're going to stop there. That wasn't high quality filmmaking, but we redid a bunch of the Grammar Rock videos, and Melanie and I made complete fools of ourselves to say, we don't know what the hell to do with these things, but we're going to do this. And you tell us what you can do. And it really made me think, these kids that were in front of us, for the longest time, always had their story told by someone else. And I still think it happens in large numbers today. That people get great pleasure out of telling somebody else's story as if they couldn't tell it themselves. And so we wanted to empower the kids. And so we said, well, what if they could tell their own stories? And so we gave them the cameras. And we got things like this.
I remember my cousin home with alcohol and that. Everything's all, you don't work, you don't do anything. And the house is all tore up around.
What do you mean I don't do anything? Look at you, you do a lot. Oh my God. You never put a lot on the plate.
Wait a minute.
What did you put in the The car keys, coffee, the same old crap that we fight over.
Worry about it, you know it does not for me soon. Can we go to sleep?
I don't really care if they stop in a couple minutes. We're just going to start thinking later. I swear to God, this time I'm serious. I'm going to leave soon because I can't take it anymore.
Don't go. I mean, come on now. We're you to sleep in a box. And on top of that, you don't have any money, so how are you going to eat food? I mean, it's pointless just to leave when you don't have anything or anywhere to go. So you just might as well stay here.
You know what, Sam? I'm just really angry right now. You should just sleep on it. And then I know that once you take a nap or once you wake up, you feel a lot better.
You're right. It's frustrating sometimes. It's always hard.
Hey, sir. Sir? Sir?
Stay at your house?
Oh, you can.
Why?
You just can't.
Come on.
Stop you there. It goes on for 7 minutes. But they told their own stories. And they did them pretty well. And that led to entering that film in a local film competition, the Innovative Videos and Education Awards, with a group of these three plus one more, which led to this, the Grand Recognition Award for the best film in the competition, which led to Apple showing it at one of its corporate meetings, which led to them getting a scholarship to go to Stanford to spend a week at the Visual Media Academy. We won one scholarship, and the teen center was run by Father Joe, and I went to their board and I said, 4 kids made the movie, and I was their teacher. Why don't you send us all to Stanford? So he did. And so they got to spend a week in Stanford making films, and I think they did not like Palo Alto, though, I will tell you that, because they were really disturbed that there weren't any homeless people, and they thought they were hiding them somewhere. I thought that was very funny. And then somebody shared the media of the films. Not we didn't share it, but somebody entered their film in the Syracuse International Film Festival, and then the Syracuse International Film Festival contacted us, and they picked our film. And so I had to go to Father Joe again. And I said, hey, we were just entered in the Syracuse International Film Festival, can the kids go? And he said, 2. So we took 2 girls to the Syracuse, and while we were there, we went to the house, the morning that our film was going to be shown, we went to the house of whoever owns the local Syracuse newspaper, and RoboCop was there. That's Peter Weller. Buckaroo Banzai, for those of you that are older. And he started talking to the girls, and he asked what they were doing, and they said they were from San Diego, and they had made a film about being a runaway. And then I said to the girls, we have to go, our film shows at 2 o'clock, and Peter Weller's like, can I go with you? So we took RoboCop to the movies. It's kind of cool. Because you know, wherever you go, there you are. All right, this is Buckaroo Banzai reference. So it was that kind of thing, giving these kids their voice, and I didn't have time. If you want, let me know. I filed a bunch of these videos and put them online. We had a number of kids win awards making films about their lives. They produced their own music, and they did amazing things. And they did things with those tiny little Canon video cameras that the wealthy schools couldn't do with green screens and $4,000 cameras, because they were telling their stories. It wasn't amazing filmmaking, but they were telling amazing stories. And so I want you to just turn to a partner right now, and I want you to think about, what can you do to give all of your kids a voice? Or what have you done to give all of your kids a voice? Please just take a second and talk to your partner. But I love getting educators to talk to each other and sharing ideas and brainstorming. So I think you could come up with ways in which you can do that, but you need to be mindful of it. You really need to be mindful of it. Then 2005 happened, and I was asked to go to Cal State San Marcos as a distinguished teacher in residence, and it was the hardest decision that I had to make. Should I go or should I stay? Not in a clash kind of way. But I couldn't in my heart leave those kids. They're why I became a teacher. But then I had to ask myself, I'm only with 30 kids a day. What if I could reach their teachers? And what if those teachers could then reach 30 kids a day? And even though it was a hard choice, I knew it was the right choice. So I went to Cal State San Marcos in 2005, just full-time on loan for 2 years. And I'm still teaching with Cal State San Marcos. And I think it was the right thing to do, because I try everything I can to get every educator to see my kids as people, and to let them tell their stories, and to get them to ask their kids to tell their stories and not tell it for them. This is Trisha McElroy, and I was her teacher when she was a senior. I left right 2 months before she graduated, but I continued to mentor her through the graduation process, and then I mentored her through college, where she received a number of Westwright scholarships all the way through college. So Trisha graduated 2 years ago from San Diego State with a bachelor's degree in psychology, commissioned in the United States Army, and a family still suffering from homelessness. And now, Trisha is studying for her master's in social work at USC. This is LaShanae Johnson, Trisha's best friend. She too suffers from homelessness, and her family suffered from homelessness. but she lived with Trisha. They made an immediate bond together, and they were both at San Diego State, and they wanted to go to India. And I was their mentor for this Westwick scholarship, and they wanted to go mid-semester. They wanted to go intersession. They wanted to go in January. And so I had to go to the scholarship committee, and I said, can you release all of their money to me so I can send them to India? And they said, what's going to happen if they come back and they don't have a place to live? I'm like, you don't understand. They've been there. It won't happen again. And if they have to stay in my garage, they will. And so they gave me the money. The girls went to India. They spent a semester there. They came back. Then La Chenet graduated a year later, and then La Chenet received a fellowship, and La Chenet it taught for a year in India. And this is Ryan Hudson. He is very much like my son. And Ryan didn't go to college, but Ryan is an athlete. Ryan is an amazing athlete, and he is now a professional snowboarder in Salt Lake City, Utah. And so I had to say to myself, what is it that how can I continue to nourish these relationships with these kids, and how do I know? How do I know that what I'm doing with them has some kind of legacy, has some kind of lasting power? And you have to think about how do you quantify the value of a relationship? And I think it's legacy. And so we get movies like this.
I was in 4th or 5th grade, and we were living in a shelter at the time, and I remember I needed help with my homework, so I sat down with my mom on the couch in our TV room, and it was about the time the president was giving an address, and a photographer came in, and he asked if he could take some photos of us, and the photo ended up on the front page the next day. Me doing my homework in the shelter with my mom next to me, the president on screen in the background, and at first I was proud just to see myself in the paper. Then I read the description, and it's something like Benita and her son Ryan, who have been homeless for a long time, sit down to watch the president give his speech. The next day, I went to school, and a lot of the kids were saying, "Oh, you're homeless, and that's why you have old shoes and your clothes are dirty." It really hurt to hear that. That was the point when I realized that I myself was homeless, and it was hard to hear that and realize that. And that was a point that really changed a lot of things for me. When I was 14 years old, I found Tucson Academy, which is a school and shelter for homeless and runaway teens. Within the first week of me being there, I sat down and began playing the drums, and instantly a door opened to opportunity and creativity and positivity. I completely shut myself off from everyone else, locked myself in the music room and played the drums. I took that confidence and motivation that I found in playing the drums and put it towards riding and skateboarding and the arts. I never really found that one thing that could really change my life up until the moment I met Chris Ruckers. Chris came into the program one day and decided he wanted to take a group of us kids out snowboarding. At first, snowboarding was just this really distant thing on TV, and I thought, oh, sure, why not? And we took the 3-hour drive up into the mountains, and while the other kids slept, I was completely glued to the window, looking out at the surroundings, at the mountains, at the open plains. And when we got there, and I got on the board for the first time, I just did it. It felt natural, it felt normal. And all that positivity and motivation that I got from playing music finally turned into a sense of purpose. And it was a moment that changed my life forever. My first competition was the North Face Masters. The start list came out the night before, and I was dead last. The entire day was cloudy, snowy, and while I was at the top, waiting my turn, my fists were clenched, I was shaking, so nervous, thinking, what am I doing? I'm not supposed to be here, I'm way out of my league. And the guy on the radio says, Hudson, you're up, get in the gate. Put the camera right in my face, and right away, clouds broke, the sun came out, and I could see the entire run, top to bottom, and the moment just became this perfect moment. So I took a deep breath, and immediately my nervousness was gone. I felt really comfortable, and I dropped. There was one kid that immediately stood out to me. Just as Chris did to me, I did for Vincent. Took him up to the top of the run, and once we got to the top, I watched him stop and look around. He stood in the same place that I stood. It was as if I saw myself for the first time through him. I could feel his feeling, just the grin that was on his face. It was this sense of discovery and joy, and feeling that connection to something bigger than yourself for the first time. And so I took a deep breath and I shared that moment with him. My name is Ryan Hudson, and I am a Northwest Ambassador.
Ryan's an amazing athlete, and he's even better as a human being. And the legacy that I'm talking about was he was talking about Vincent. That he had the success, but he knew that he needed to go back, and he knew Vincent, and he brought Vincent out to Salt Lake last year, and he spent the entire year out there. And Ryan doesn't have a lot of money. He's a pro snowboarder, but that just means he gets all his stuff paid for. And he gives everything that he can to everybody around him. And so I flew him out last week, and he came down to stay with our family. He's like a member of our family. All he wanted to do, he would take my car every day, and he would go see somebody. That's the legacy that I want, and that's what I got from him. On Monday, I'm going to Amsterdam. I'm going to the Google and EDU Moonshot Summit. And I feel like my entire teaching career has led up to the fact that I've been looking for moonshots in education because I want to share and I want to reach a larger audience, and this is kind of a crazy opportunity. So I'm going to Amsterdam on Monday just to participate and to meet with other educators that want to see education look differently. And I had to create a little 1-minute video, so I'm going to play that video for you.
Hi everyone, Jeffrey Heil coming to you from lovely sunny San Diego, California. And my moonshot ideas are quite simple. I just want an aspect of student voice, choice, and agency in every learning experience. And this includes teaching. I think that we need to distribute the teaching and learning model so that everybody has the opportunity to contribute to someone else's learning. And this needs to occur in an environment that has no walls or borders, preferably in a global society. And I think we need to work on strictly mastery-based learning. We can throw grades out the window, focus on the learning, not on the grades. And I think if we can do this in a global classroom, the technology can connect us in ways that we can make great strides and also come to great understanding of each other as individuals. And this would also require that we fail forward often and publicly so that everyone can see that learning is more of a process than a product. And if we can do that, we'll achieve probably my greatest goal, which is to eliminate the predictability of who succeeds and fails in our schools based on the color of their skin. Very simple. Hope you're with me, and I look forward to meeting everybody in about a week.
So those are my moonshot ideas, and so I thought, I need to make these moonshot ideas explainable in ways that would make sense to children or teenagers, because I happen to have 2 teenagers of my own. And so I'm going to explain to you my moonshot ideas using the language of text. So you hear these crazy moonshot ideas and you're probably thinking to yourself, WTF, right? Why teach failure? Why teach failures? Failure should not be an option. And what does it mean to say failure is not an option? It means that we go to mastery-based learning. It means that we believe in a growth mindset. If you want to test whether or not you have a growth or a fixed mindset, just go to bit. Does that sound familiar? bit.ly/mindset survey, and you can see Carol Dweck's website, and you can decide whether or not you have a fixed or a growth mindset. But what does it mean to have a fixed or a growth mindset? Well, a fixed mindset, I think, is the legacy that most of us had in our schooling experiences. A fixed mindset is the belief that intelligence is static, and it leads to a desire to look smart, and therefore, you're afraid that you will avoid challenges, you'll give up easily. A growth mindset is the belief that intelligence is not fixed, that it could be nurtured, that it could be grown. And if you have a growth mindset, you embrace challenges because you will learn from them, and you persist in the face of setbacks. And so I think we can use that growth mindset to power the belief behind the mastery-based learning. And I think that a legacy of the fixed mindset is what I call the problem of perfection. Most of you are educators. How many of you hate to put anything out there that isn't perfect? And I think that's a legacy of the fixed mindset. And I get it, I do it too. But what we're doing unconsciously is modeling for students that unless they have perfect work, that they shouldn't put it out there publicly. You're not saying it, you're just modeling it. And I think it's important that as teachers and educators and learners that we fail forward it publicly so that kids can see that. And we can do that through agency. And Will Richardson just released his latest book, From Master Teacher to Master Learner. And he was looking at this quadrant here to say, all right now in today's schools, are we focusing on more towards breadth or depth? And are we more student organized or teacher organized? What say you? What quadrant are we in? Right there. Right, so we all agree that. What would be the ideal state? Student organized and focusing on depth over breadth. So currently, we're in a knowing model where we need to be able to regurgitate facts and we need to be able to give you the information that you're asking me for. If we can reach our ideal state, we'll be in a learning framework. And so that way we are investigating, we're failing forward, and we're learning, and we're going deeper into things to develop a greater understanding. So the key for us is to figure out how to bridge that gap. And my solution is that we do mastery-based learning. And the first thing we do is go with a one-column rubric. Why do we give kids the opportunity to fail? Because that's what the first two columns do. So we work with mastery-based learning, and we allow them to fix any mistakes that they have because they should be making mistakes because that's part of the learning process. And it should be done without penalty. And this is from the Courage to Teach from Parker Palmer, and he says, when I give a final grade, it is not an average, but the grade given for the last revision. In this way, I hope to show students that the intent of evaluation is to offer guidelines for learning rather than terminal judgments. I love that. I put that in all my rubrics, right, Natalie? And so we're going to learn some new texting terms that apply to this concept. ROFL is now require ongoing failure for learning. NSFW is now nurture space for wonder. And TBH can be one of two things. Think before homework or trash bad habits. Get out of that fixed mindset. And so if you approach this with kids, they're going to say, dude, FML. Facilitate my learning. Give me opportunities for voice, choice, and agency. That's what I want to do. And how can I do that? We need to rethink learning. And I do that a lot by reading and talking to Ken, and talking to Lisa, and talking to Jesse, and talking to my crew, that we're pretty much involved in this. Dan Pink talks about autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Tony Wagner talks about play, passion, and purpose. Douglas Thomas and John Seeley Brown see this new epistemology of learning as a feature of not only knowing, not only knowledge, but also of play and also of making. And Margaret Wheatley and Deborah Fries see that play is invaluable in the learning process. Play returns us to a state where we can see what's possible, not what's so. And most importantly, there is no failure in play. So how do we get to that state? We produce work for a global audience. We fail forward. We throw it out there. We play. We make mistakes. We learn. We move on, and we share everything. And I think I haven't been able to do that in the K-12 setting as much, but I have been teaching higher ed, so I force all of my higher ed students to do all of this, produce work, share it publicly. And I thought this was very ironic. I was having lunch with Natalie today, and do you remember Natalie slammed the color picker yesterday? And she slammed the color picker where she created her own sort of kind of a meme type thing where she used a royalty-free image, put her own text in there. And it was in response to the New Culture of Learning, a book that I made her read for class. And then guess who took that same image and put it on his update, John Seeley Brown, the author, as he retweeted her. So if we're sharing publicly, we're connecting to that global audience, and we can do that with all ages of kids. The other way we can do that are 20% projects. That gives kids a lot of voice, choice, and agency. So if we can do that with 20% projects, if you go to bit.ly/20time blogs, you can see a lot of my past students' efforts at that. I think it's very important that adults model this process by failing forward. And if we can do that, if we can learn publicly, if we can fail forward, we're being transparent in our learning. And when we do that, when we learn transparently, we become a teacher. And so you can do that as an adult, your students can do that as adolescents, just by making it public. So we need a few new terms around this concept. The first would be OMG, options maintain growth. LOL, we should be learning out loud. BAE, begin agency early. And GTG, genius tops grades. And now you're thinking, it's late, Jeff, STFU. And I say, bro, what we need to do is prevent this, because some teachers fail students unconsciously. And this is where I need to talk to you about data. Because I learned very early and often in my equity work that data is how you reach white people. And so we as a state fail miserably in graduating kids that are A through G eligible, that are eligible for CSU. As a whole system, we fail miserably. I think collectively we're at best at 50%. But look where we are in some of the highest areas of need. African Americans graduated at a 68% rate, and only 29% of those are UC eligible. Low socioeconomic status, 75% grad rate, 30% eligibility, and worst of all, our EL population, 63% grad rate, 9% graduate, ready to go to a UC or a CSU. That's a culture of low expectations, and we need to change that. So we can begin with relationships. So how can you leverage your relationships? How can you leverage the technology in order to disrupt this pattern? That's what you need to be doing. I don't have the answers for you, but you need to keep this in the back of your head. You need to think of the data, but more than anything, you need to see the faces. Look on your rosters and see who's failing. Pick a kid, work with that kid. Don't let failure be an option in your schools. But we're also dealing with the legacy, and I think this is very challenging for people. We're dealing with the legacy where a lot of people that look like me did a lot of bad things to people that look like Ken. And it's not my fault. I didn't do it to him. But it's a fact. It's an artifact of our culture. And I think we need to own that, and then we as teachers need to then overcome that and help. Sometimes it means going an extra step, right? And in a culture of equity, right? And in a culture of equality, sometimes we don't think we have to go the extra step, but I believe we do. I really, especially as teachers. And so this comes to us from Ralph Ellison, who wrote The Invisible Man. And he says, if you show me how I can cling to that which is real to me while teaching me a way into the larger society, then and only then will I drop my defenses and my hostility, and I will sing your praises, and I will help you to make the desert bear fruit. And I think you need to keep that in mind when you have to stay a little bit longer to work with a kid, or you have to do something a little bit more, because that kid may have a parent who was treated very poorly from someone who looked like me. And so what are you doing? What are you going to do to give all kids a voice? We have social media now. I didn't have that when I was at the Teen Center. And so I would absolutely love it if you would follow Ryan Hudson. He is at rhudsonsb on both Twitter and on Instagram, because he tells his story publicly and openly. LaShanae is on Instagram, but she doesn't like sharing her story publicly, although it's a brilliant story of her Fulbright scholarship of the year she spent in India teaching. I asked her, I was texting her yesterday, I'm like, please make it public. I don't want a bunch of people I don't know following me. I said, that's okay. And Lisa talked to you about the value of YouTube for connections, and Ken's talked to you about the value of Twitter. So we need to do that. We need to do this for our kids. And so how high could we get these kids in achievement if they know they have a caring adult in their corner? How about to the top of Mount Denali? Because that's where Ryan went. And while he was there, this is what he said on Instagram. Nothing is impossible. Here I stand around 16,800 feet at 6 a.m. during our push to the 17,000-foot camp and the summit. I witnessed the earth looking more beautiful than I've ever seen in my 25 years of life. I remain humbled because every moment on this mountain was terrifying for me. The risk of death living with every step I took. While so far from home and way out of my element, I, in so many ways, knew this was exactly where I wanted to be. Through confidence, perseverance, respect, and understanding, you can accomplish the greatest of challenges that come in life. Never fear the idea of stepping out of your comfort zone. Never fear the idea of breaking free from traditional lifestyles. Believe in yourself and you will be able to overcome the trials you fear the most. I love this kid. And oh, by the way, so does John Krakauer, who climbed the mountain with him. Because that's John Krakauer's. Krakauer not writing. And so that's my challenge to you. That's my challenge to you. Find that kid. Because we also need to let Julie Heil know that we are all school people, both adults and kids. And so my challenge to you is to, when you get back to your school, when you get back to your site, find your Ryan and make sure that you do not let them fail. Thank you very much.